Hello guys, this weekend we have got UFC 310 in the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. This is the second to last card of the year, and although I'm sad that we usually take the break from December towards the beginning month of January until the first card of the new year, it's necessary because if you look at the cards for 2025, they all are so bad right now. They either have no fights on them or trash fights, so this will give them good time to make matchups that we want to watch for those upcoming events, because right now nothing there that I'm excited for. So we're gonna get right into each fight matchup by matchup, going from the early prelims onto the main card. We're gonna start with Lucasz Breszki versus Kennedy Nzechekwu. Okay, so Lucasz Breszki is kind of mid, but at the same time the sequences that end his fights where he loses are usually people just catching him, whatever that's worth. You know, whenever people say he didn't outskill me, I just got caught, that doesn't really stand in a court of law, honestly, because a loss is a loss. But if you want to make this concession for him, he does get caught a lot in fights where he's otherwise pretty competitively striking with the guy that he's fighting. And if they don't finish the fight, other big moments that they would have would just be because they rocked him. Like Carl Williams caught this man with a naked overhand and then suplexed him in the middle of the cage. It was hilarious. And this is interesting because we have a guy who can finish fights in Breszki, because he has finished, Walter Walker in a fight. He fights like a rooster. It's hilarious. And he's really heavy. And then there's Kennedy Nzechekwu as well, who will sometimes have like inconsistent good showings and then otherwise lose really easy fights outside of that. He's super easy to finish too, so this is going to be a really hard fight to call. Honestly, I don't know who to pick right now. I don't believe though that Kennedy Nzechekwu's 205 skill will translate up to heavyweight. We've seen that it hasn't really. Heavyweight Nzechekwu is pretty athletic for a heavyweight, but he's still underpowered and not someone that I would choose to knock out Breszki, even though he very well could do it because they're heavyweights. But I think that Breszki is going to surprise a lot of people, and especially Kennedy Nzechekwu, with his power and speed early and get the finish. So I could see this happening in the first or second round, or it just is a horrible fight and it goes to decision. I hope Breszki wins in any of these events, so that's who I'm going to pick. The next fight is going to be Guida versus Chase Hooper. So one thing I want to make note of is that they are protecting Chase Hooper from losing too early in lightweight, which is something that I'm cool with it. Like, being able to finish Guida honestly comes down to, do you have a submission threat or not? He's not a bad grappler and he can wrestle pretty good, so you have to be able to choke people pretty proficiently in order to stop the fight against Guida. Otherwise, he could drag it to a decision really well, or you could just stalemate with him, and that happens quite a lot. He has a bunch of fights, so pretty much every single outcome has happened in the octagon whenever he's fought somebody. The last guy who has subbed Guida though was Claudio Puelles in the first round, and I think that that's the best grappler that he was match made against before this weekend. Chase Hooper can tie up Guida super easily, I'm feeling like. So if the fight stays standing too, like we just watched Chase Hooper drop Vyacheslav Borshlev and sub him, and he like dropped him clean with his hands, so I'm also going to pay attention to that too. I think like he got that win, Chase Hooper, and then the organization realized that they might have a star in their hand, so they're trying to give him like the Bo Nickel treatment and slow build him through the rankings. It's almost like he just got to the UFC again. Like, what is he doing fighting Guida at this point? It's hilarious. So Guida's coming off of 2 decision losses. It's something that's probably softened him up at this point. Chase Hooper is going to win this fight via a round 1 submission or a brutal walk-off KO, because he is this is literally Charles Oliveira 2.0, man. Like, I'm there and I believe it. So that's what I'm choosing. The next fight is going to be Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. So Michael Chiesa's last win after getting choked out by Kevin Holland, I think he was also dropped in this fight and then subbed in round 1, was a submission over Tony Ferguson. But like, does that even count if we're being honest? I see like Chiesa and Neil Magny as kind of like two sides of the same coin, They're pretty much the same. Though Neil Magny is a little bit more durable, and that probably makes him like a better fighter of the two. I think that Max Griffin I think that he might fold here like he did against Neil Magny or Alex Morono or Michael Morales, which I'm going to talk about less than the other two just because he actually is a good fighter. I'm going to take a shot and I'm going to side with Chiesa here just because he has a little bit of momentum And I think that Max Griffin is a guy who could get beaten by a decision using grappling if the game plan is there. Because other fighters who, I mean, I want to say who are worse than Chiesa, but like, it's honestly debatable. Morono and Chiesa, that's debatable. But I'm just going to pick Michael Chiesa to win this fight. I think he's going to do it by decision. I think it's going to be uneventful. He may end up choking the guy. I really want to see that happen because I like Michael Chiesa, and legends have been going out really weird lately, so hopefully he's not one of those guys. Although Max Griffin has been around for a while too. That's going to take us on to the next fight. Cody Durden versus Joshua Van, and my boy Joshua Van is staying busy, bro. After he had a big win over Edgar Chairez at UFC Noche, he's acting like the Charles Johnson fight didn't even happen, and like, good for him, man, good for him. Cody Durden, though, just got an equally big win over Matt Schnell, but realistically, Matt Schnell retired after this fight, and what do you think Joshua Van would have done to Matt Schnell? Granted, they fought. Joshua Van would have, like, I'm not even sure if Matt Schnell would have been able to take his gloves off at the end of that fight. If you really just think about who both of those people are, like, that win from Cody Durden isn't that impressive, to be honest. Cody Durden was getting laced by Matt Schnell, though, in the stand-up. I mean, sure, he did drop and sub, but everyone just been getting dropped and subbed lately. It's been hilarious, honestly. This year has produced some good finishes. Just a little side note, I'm very happy about my viewership and what I've been seeing lately from these cards, so hopefully we can keep the momentum going. I'm confident, though, because Matt Schnell was tagging up Cody Durden, Joshua Van is going to have no problem hitting him, and I think that this is going to make Cody Durden the ideal ranked prospect for Joshua Van to steal a number from, and I'm going to pick him to win via devastating KO in round 1. Moving on, we're going to be talking about Chris Weidman versus Erik Anders. So this was a fight that I had discussed before. I think it was UFC 309 it got delayed from, so it's happening now. I mean, I like Chris Weidman, but I don't think that he deserves this level of gracious matchmaking after he stole that win from Bruno Silva so horribly with the eye pokes. And Erik Anders is out here losing to like Jin Young Park and Marc-Andre Barrios, and he's looking like an absolute waste man in these fights. One thing that we'll make note of, though, is that apparently Erik Anders had problems with the party lifestyle, and he's toned that back and, you know, got like custody of his kid this time around. So maybe a focused Erik Anders is going to knock out Chris Weidman. That's really what needs to happen, because Chris Weidman doesn't deserve to win another fight. He deserves to lose. He deserved to have lost the other fight. He deserved to have at least points. No one even warned him about any of the things that he was doing. No one even talked to him, and he literally cheated the whole time. I don't want to cry about this, but that really bothered me, so I think that Weidman is going to win a gifted unanimous decision if Erik Anders shows up the way that he normally looks. I want to believe that since he's not, you know, taking like Molly or whatever, he's going to be muy bien, but I don't know, because he never really looks in that good of shape. So Chris Weidman, I guess, is going to make another last run to the title, and we're all just going to have to watch it happen. Give him Anthony Hernandez next after this if he wins. We're going to go on to the next one. It's going to be Bryan Battle versus Randy Brown. Bryan Battle is very good. It has hype, and I only think that Randy Brown, instead of being very good, is only good, personally. Randy Brown, though, did beat Alexi Zaleski dos Santos, and Alexi Zaleski dos Santos is a good fighter, and he has a lot of wins over fighters who we consider legends and are going to be in the Hall of Fame. But he's getting older, but that's still very true, that if you're not at a certain level at 170, you will lose to Alexi Zaleski dos Santos. He's probably one of, if not the best gatekeeper in the UFC. I'm probably not making a list of gatekeepers now that I just said that word in a video. I'm not going to stop thinking about it. Anyways, Randy Brown is very chinnable, and volume boxing with pressure is the way that Jack Della Maddalena was able to knock him out. Bryan Battle is going to be able to do the same thing to Randy Brown just because he knocked out Kevin Gisette in France the exact same way that I just described to you right now. High volume boxing with great amounts of pressure. And I don't think this fight will last long, so I'm going to call the Butcher via a round 2 KO. We are going to go on to the next fight, and that's going to be Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. It's funny because Movsar really does have the most unfair plot armor that like aggressively protects him, and he fights like he can't lose. and he should definitely lose. It protects him from these losses, like the one against Arnold Allen. Egregious, mate. Even the close fight against Diego Lopez too. It's really crazy how he just continuously pulls these ones out. It's kind of psychotic. It's maddening if you really are like fans of these fighters that he's fighting. I really like Aljamain Sterling, so I know I don't want to see this happen again. The thing that's like making me optimistic though is the fact that the rules have changed, so he has less of an out to cling to like the ground, because he's just a ground hugger. Like all the strikes you're gonna throw at him at a certain point if you're clinching are gonna be illegal, because he's just gonna flop, and then you can't really hit him with that many punches. But the rules have changed now, so he can't just put his hand down on the ground and be like a grounded fighter. But Aljamain Sterling can't do the same thing either, so that's where this is tricky. But Movsar does otherwise have very messy striking, and he has probably more power than Aljo, but I think that Aljamain Sterling is technically better than Movsar Evloev and fancier, whatever that is worth. But I don't think that he will be, the strength of Movsar and his skill level will not be enough to just throw Aljamain Sterling across the cage and ragdoll him. I don't think that he'll just be able to do that, because he's not able to do that to other featherweights who are grapplers. And Aljamain Sterling is a grappler of the highest level out of bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight. He's one of the best grapplers in all three of those divisions. We literally saw that in the Cater fight. So this will be a very high level grappling match. I don't think that it will end in a finish. I'm going to ride with Aljamain Sterling here, and I'm going to favor him to control the cage and attack submissions in scrambles. I think that he'll force Movsar Evloev to play defense the whole time, and that he'll be busier than he is, and he'll win each round. So that's what I think is going to happen. Unanimous decision for that boy, Aljamain Sterling. Moving on to the next fight, that's going to be Vicente Luque versus Themba Gorimbo. So I'm ready to take a chance and believe in Vicente Luque again, honestly. I think that he can hurt Gorimbo if he's aggressive like he was before he just stopped fighting back for some reason. And he doesn't risk a high chance of getting finished, I don't think, or walk off KO'd at least, just because Themba Gorimbo doesn't really do that. Nico Price just lost a decision to Themba Gorimbo, and the fact that he wasn't, like knocked out completely by Themba is just because he's pillow-fisted. So Luque has had a very long layoff, and if he loses this fight, I won't be surprised, because we all have accepted that, like, at a certain point, Vicente Luque would have been a good match made for Nick Diaz. Sure, the first time that I'd seen that match made, I was like, Nick Diaz is going to get crushed. And then I really thought about it in the way that that boy Vicente Luque has been going out lately. I'm not sure if he, watches Neil. I mean, maybe he does. Neil Magny is... I want to believe that he's still, elite level, though, so I think that the long layoff is going to help him return to this level. If he loses this fight, I'm pulling for him. That's it. Unanimous decision for the Silent Assassin. We're going to move on to the next fight in the card. It's going to be Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith. So it's time for Dominic Reyes to spin back and get vengeance for himself by knocking out Anthony Smith, man. So it's time for him to lock in and enter the rankings for one last time before he retires. Dominic Reyes, he needs to focus up and get this done for the fellas. Anthony Smith is completely done, I think. And this has the potential to be a brutal knockout if Reyes does come out the same way that he fought Dustin Jacoby. So, Jan, Yuri, and even Span all hit much harder than Smith. So if there's a knockout threat that's to be feared by Reyes, it's not there. Grappling is more of an issue. I just think that Reyes does also maybe need to watch out too, because though I just said that Anthony Smith is done, he did strike pretty competitively with Roundtree in round one of their fight. He didn't have the easiest time with Smith before he knocked him out. But Dominic Reyes, he does still have power and a lot of finishing capabilities, so that's why I'm going to pick him to win this fight by round 1 KO. It's going to end fast. I've wanted to see this fight for a while, and I want it to end the way that I've imagined in my head, so that's what I'm going to go with. This is the pick. Lock it in. Moving on, we have Nate Landwehr versus Doohoo Choi. So Nate the Train is my boy. We all like Nate the Train. And I'm going to favor him to beat Doohoo Choi, who's fought to a draw with Kyle Nelson and suffered losses to Cub Swanson, Jeremy Stevens, and Charles Jourdain consecutively. Nate the Train is a power puncher I feel that could be mentioned with those guys, but he's definitely in last place if we're going to rank all of them in terms of their power. But he does have some sleepy knockouts in his highlight reel, so we can't just act like he is pillow-fisted, because he's not. That's not true. Nate is an animal, and I think that unless he gets knocked out cold, he will use his 99 heart and 99 chin to make it a finish of his own in the later rounds. He literally just wants it more than the guy that he's fighting every time, and that's why he wins. And I think that that's what he's going to do this time. It's going to be a late round 2, early round 3, late round 3 KO. And then we're going to get an absolute classic on that mic afterwards. So moving on, we have Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie. This fight is a very nice thing that the organization is doing for Bryce Mitchell. We watched him get knocked out so badly by Josh Emmett that he started seizing up and stuff on the ground. And that wasn't very nice to look at all. So he's taken a good amount of time off since this. And now he's going to challenge to re-enter the rankings. And he's going to start off by fighting Kron Gracie. And Kron Gracie is a man who cannot hurt people with his hands. In his fight with Charles Jourdain, he spent the whole duration of the fight getting punched and just pulling guard over and over again. This is the matchmaker at the UFC. They're really just doing Bryce Mitchell a favor, because if he loses this fight, it's just because he will be getting out-grappled or submitted, which I feel like isn't very likely. So let's watch Bryce Mitchell bounce back in a 3-round decision.
That was crazy.
I really hope that he can scrape up a win here. That was a really nasty KO, man. That was probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen. We're just going to talk about the next fight. Ciryl Gane versus Alexandre Volkov. So this fight was postponed for a knee injury that Volkov suffered in training. If it is anything serious, the month and a half that it's been since this fight was first postponed and that made the news, I don't think that will be enough time for Volkov to have healed properly. And I think that this injury will make itself notable in this fight. So it's hard to say what type of shape Ciryl Gane will come into this fight in as well, because we never see him train. And whenever he is talked about, it's because he's shooting movies and not because he's fighting. I just think that getting a piece of information like your opponent's knee is hurt, and then like taking that into a fight and being able to gameplay and around that is way too valuable of a thing, unless it was faked, you know, just to throw Ciryl Gane off of his trail. I don't know what kind of mind games Volkov is playing, but I've met Alexandre Volkov before. It's actually funny that we're talking about this dude. And the fact that this has happened, and because he's a decent dude, I kind of want to pick him. Ciryl Gane is a fighter that I always viewed as a hype job, and he can definitely beat up fat dudes, but I feel like he can only really beat up fat dudes. And the same thing can be said about Volkov too, don't get me wrong, but this is either of their chances to really like legitimize themselves, because Ciryl Gane has won against Volkov, and I think that he beat Blades too, but they were really boring fights and they sucked. So we'll see how this one goes. I'm going to pick Volkov to win a decision in this fight, and I think it's going to be an absolute masterclass by my boy. The co-main event of this card is going to be Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Garry. And man, I wonder how many people just get mad, bro, whenever I just say stuff, dude. It's what I think, man. It's my channel. This is what I think. I think that Shavkat is such an untested hype job, bro. And if you look at both of these guys' resumes side by side, it's the same. They each have the same opponents. The only difference is Shavkat fought Wonderboy and Garry fought MVP. And these opponents, Wonderboy and MVP, they both have similar styles, but I'd say the boxing abilities of MVP make him far and above a more dangerous fighter than Wonderboy does, and Garry was still able to control that fight and not get knocked out. And in a way, he kind of dismantled MVP, bro. Garry did a good job in that fight. I just feel like because he did get hit by one of the greatest strikers in the world cleanly a few times, of course, people are going to underrate that performance, but it was pretty good. If you put lesser men in there, they would have gotten knocked out by MVP. He looked really good in that fight, so I'm going to give him points for that. Shavkat can hurt Ian Garry, but he can also get outworked too, because it has happened in fights. He does lose at certain points of his fights, and he can even be caught, and they both have questionable chins too. I think putting faith in Ian Garry to rise to a championship level is safer than trusting Shavkat to live up to this hype, you know? Shavkat kind of reminds me of Oralbai. He really does remind me of Oralbai so much, dude. And I think that he's going to get exposed the same way in one of these fights, dude. By just a guy who's just also really good. So I'm going to say Ian Garry via 48-47 decision. I'm actually picking him to win this fight. And that's going to take us into Kai Asakura versus Alexandre Pantoja. And I do talk a lot of trash on Pantoja because he's a champion that's really dominant, and his fights aren't always the most entertaining, but he wins, and that's the most important thing. So I'm gonna apologize for that in this video, man. This fight really has me appreciating Pantoja a lot more, because he's a good champion, and he's a fighter that I respect. And if you aren't the best in the world, he does beat you, and that's what being the champion should mean. It's not like he's just a guy who got the belt in passing. Like, you really have to be the best in the world if you want to beat Pantoja. And that's the reason why I'm kind of offended, because they think that Kai Asakura can take this challenge on, like, the cannibal before getting tested at all in the UFC. That's so crazy to me. And I know that they tried to make the Royval fight happen, but Royval didn't want to take the risk, I guess. I don't know. Maybe he knows something that I don't, but we for real don't even know if this guy is good enough yet to be in the promotion. And he's gonna fight Pantoja. That kind of pisses me off a little bit. I'd honestly be cool with it if we didn't just watch Tatsuro Taira get absolutely mixed up by Royval not too long ago. And I get that all people are different, but why is Kai Asakura being made out to be the boogeyman if it doesn't even seem like there's a whole lot behind it? And I bought it last time. Maybe this guy actually is what I thought Tatsuro Taira was. But I don't think so, man. And back to what I said before, Royval said that he didn't want to take this fight because the debut was too risky for him to give up his ranking with a chance to have lost. But I'm not sure if he was actually seriously considering the fact that Kai Asakura would have knocked him out or something. I don't really care either way. Pantoja is my guy, and he's going to win, and he's going to cry about his past on the mic like he always does. And I'm going to cry with him this time if it's a good performance. I'm going to be like, I worked so hard for everything in my life with Pantoja. So yeah, man, that's going to be the card. Please. We're on our way up, dude. All of the video content has been going really crazy lately. Everybody's been supporting it. I really appreciate you guys a lot. Please subscribe to this channel. This is an American-made product. If you are an American, you are helping American MMA grow its own representation. Right now, we are losing to Australia. We are losing to England. I mean, I'm sure we have Lucasz Tracy, but that guy might be like a little bit Canadian or something, man. You're supporting, this is an act of patriotism whenever you subscribe to my channel, bro. So please like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more content. I'm excited to bring it to you guys. Have a wonderful day. I will catch you fellas in the next one.